had grown up surrounded by stories of legends. Not ordinary tales, but stories of a species so fierce, so unpredictable, and so courageous that even the bravest of her people whispered their names in awe: humans. According to the ancient texts, humans had fought wars across distant stars, surviving impossible odds with only courage, wits, and determination. Two, they were a mystery, a figure of myth. No one alive had ever faced one. Most believed they were long gone, or perhaps they had never existed at all. From the moment she first learned of them, curiosity had burned in her chest. She remembered hiding in the library as a child, reading about the legendary human warriors who could topple armies with a few clever maneuvers. Her instructors had warned her, "These are not creatures to underestimate. Even their stories speak of strength and cunning beyond comprehension." But the stories felt distant, almost fictional. Legends were entertaining, yes, but real danger. That belonged to known species, not a myth from dusty old records. Now standing on the observation deck of her flagship's heart beat with a mix of excitement and skepticism. Her fleet had detected an unknown human ship entering the outer systems, moving with precision and purpose. The scanners confirmed it: life signs, humanoid in structure, and unmistakably human. She couldn't help a small laugh. "Legends don't appear at my doorstep," she murmured to herself, though the words felt hollow. Her advisors moved nervously around her, voices low and hurried. "High Commander, we should prepare defenses. Reports say human ships are fast, unpredictable, lethal." Turned to them with a calm expression, but inside something stirred, something she had never felt before. She didn't feel fear yet, but she felt the first hint of respect, fragile and new, creeping into her chest. She shook her head. Respect for a story? That seemed ridiculous. When the ship landed on the neutral zone, the hatch opened and a single figure emerged. His breath caught. The human was taller than most of her species, with broad shoulders and a quiet strength that radiated without effort. His eyes scanned the surroundings with a calm awareness, observing everything, yet giving nothing away. There was no arrogance, no show of power, yet sensed that this being could move mountains if he wanted to. He approached, keeping her steps measured, her body language firm yet respectful. The human met her halfway, and for a moment there was silence between them. She extended her hand, performing the formal greeting of her people. He took it, and the grip was firm, stronger than she expected, yet gentle, as if he understood power did not need to intimidate. The warmth of his hand sent an odd thrill through her, and she realized with surprise that this legend, this myth, felt real, tangible, alive. Her advisors whispered urgently, but barely heard them. Her mind was spinning, imagining the battles the stories had described. Could one human truly match the feats written in their legends? Could one being without an army, without the numbers her species relied on, truly change the outcome of a conflict? Shook off the thoughts, telling herself that no single warrior could be that powerful. It was impossible. But still, a small seed of doubt had been planted. As she led the human into the command center, she noticed the calm confidence in his movements. There was no hesitation, no panic, no unnecessary flourish, just quiet competence. Realized something unsettling: this human might not be just a legend in stories. He might be more than that. He might be a force she had never imagined. As the hatch closed behind him, felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. For the first time in her life, she faced the unknown, and it was staring back at her, steady and unshakable. Legends had come to life, and for nothing would ever be the same. Days passed, and observed the human closely. His name was, as he introduced himself with a calm voice, steady and confident. Unlike the many species she had encountered, he did not boast about his achievements, nor did he demand respect. He moved with purpose, but there was a strange ease in every gesture, as if the world had no power to rattle him. Advisors were restless, whispering warnings about his unpredictability, yet she found herself drawn to his presence. She had expected arrogance, she had expected pride, but carried none. Instead, he exuded something far more dangerous: competence. Every decision, every movement seemed perfectly measured. He studied the fleet, the ships, the soldiers with a sharp intelligence that made her heart quicken. It was one thing to read about human courage in stories. It was entirely different to see it in person, calm, silent, and unshakable. On the third day, a training simulation was held to test coordination between her forces, and watched as her pilots maneuvered through the asteroid field, relying on her commands and strategy. Then stepped forward. He did not take the controls immediately. Instead, he observed for a moment, analyzing patterns that had taught her fleet to follow. When he finally acted, it was with precision, predicting movements before they even happened. Ships moved in harmony under his guidance, dodging obstacles that her best pilots had missed. Felt a strange pang of emotion, pride in her fleet, yes, but also something new. This human could see the battlefield in ways she had never imagined. Her pride, carefully cultivated through years of training and experience, felt fragile in comparison to his quiet brilliance. She found herself unconsciously leaning closer, studying him, trying to understand how a single being could command such control without a fleet of advisors or centuries of training. Later that evening, they met alone on the observation deck. Stars stretched infinitely across the sky, silent witnesses to their growing tension and curiosity. Tried to speak casually to hide her fascination, but her voice betrayed her. You see things differently," she said, almost a whisper. Turned to her, his expression unreadable but kind. "I see what needs to be done," he replied simply. There was no arrogance, no bragging, just a statement of fact. Felt her chest tighten. That simple sentence carried the weight of battles she had only read about, victories she had doubted could be real. And yet here he stood, calm and unshaken, as if every story she had ever heard about humans was coming alive before her eyes. For the first time, felt the uncomfortable stirrings of fear. Not the fear of death, not yet, but the fear of being wrong. Perhaps the stories were not exaggerated. Perhaps humans were truly more than legends. And if that was true, then facing one in battle could change everything. Her thoughts raced late into the night. She replayed every encounter, every subtle movement had made, every calm decision that had guided her fleet through the simulation. It was more than skill. It was instinct, courage, and something deeper she could not name. Realized she had underestimated humans her entire life. As the twin moons rose over the horizon, casting pale light across the command deck, felt a mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. Was not just another warrior. He was a living story, a force of nature disguised as a calm, ordinary human. And deep inside her knew one undeniable truth. When the real battle came, legends would meet reality, and she had no idea if she was ready. The alarm sounded before dawn. A rogue faction had attacked a nearby colony, overwhelming local defenses. Fleet scrambled, engines roaring, weapons charging. She had trained for countless battles, yet something about this situation made her pulse quicken. She was used to commanding large fleets, relying on strategy, numbers, and precision. But this time, she had a human by her side. Stood quietly on the bridge, surveying the situation with those calm, calculating eyes. Felt a strange combination of confidence and unease. She knew the stories. Humans could be clever, fearless, unstoppable. But she had never imagined one in her command. She watched him as her advisors debated tactics, realizing she had never seen anyone so sure, so decisive, without shouting, without proving themselves. The first encounter was chaos. Enemy ships emerged from asteroid fields, firing relentlessly. Her fleet faltered for a moment, hesitation, confusion, fear. Gritted her teeth, ready to issue orders, but then moved. Not with force or loud commands, but with quiet precision. He pointed to a weak flank and suggested a maneuver that no one else had seen. Her fleet followed. The result was immediate. Enemy ships collided, caught off guard by the human's prediction. Soldiers looked shocked but inspired. She herself felt a flicker of awe. This human had seen through their enemies' tactics instantly, calculating outcomes faster than anyone she had trained with for years. Then came the trap. Rogue fighters had surrounded a civilian transport, weapons locked, ready to destroy it. His instinct was to wait, to coordinate, to avoid unnecessary risk, but stepped forward, moving toward the danger without hesitation. He was faster than any soldier she had seen, dodging fire, disarming enemies, and shielding the civilians with nothing but his body and a small blaster. His heart raced. The stories had said humans were fearless, but this was beyond fearlessness. It was a willingness to risk everything, a courage that refused to bend even in the face of certain death. She realized then that she had never truly understood bravery. She had relied on numbers, on strategy, on her training, but relied on something else. Something instinctive, something raw. By the time the battle ended, the colony was safe. Her fleet had survived, but it was actions that had tipped the scale. Walked among the aftermath, watching the injured and shaken, the survivors and the grateful. Everywhere she saw the imprint of his courage, the difference one being could make when fear had no hold over them. She found him standing alone, calm as ever, surveying the sky with no sign of fatigue. "You were incredible," she said, her voice low, almost trembling. "I don't know how you do it." Turned to her, offering only a faint smile. "I do what has to be done," he said simply. "The rest is choice." Felt something unfamiliar, a mixture of awe, respect, and unease. Legends, she realized, were not born in books or stories. They were born in moments like this, moments of courage, risk, and impossible decisions. And here he was, a living, breathing legend, standing before her. As the stars reflected off the wreckage and the lights of the recovering colony flickered in the distance, understood something profound. Her life, her understanding of war and strength would never be the same. Humans were not myths. They were real, and they carried a power that no one could ignore. For the first time, she felt the thrill of true challenge, not against armies or machines, but against a force she had only imagined in stories. And deep inside, she knew that facing in the coming battles would test everything she believed about strength, courage, and the very nature of legends. The battle was far from over. Even after the colony was saved, reports streamed in. The rogue faction had regrouped and was advancing faster than anyone expected. His fleet was stretched thin, her soldiers exhausted, and panic began creeping into the ranks. She had faced countless crises in her career, but something about this felt different. Something about the calm presence of made her aware that normal strategies might no longer be enough. She watched him on the bridge as enemy vessels emerged from the shadows of the asteroid belt. Didn't give orders loudly. He didn't shout or rush. He merely pointed, suggested, and moved. And every time her troops responded as if instinctively trusting him. Felt a strange mix of frustration and awe. She was trained to command. She had led thousands to victory. But here was a human whose very presence inspired action without fear, without hesitation, without question. The enemy launched a surprise strike at one of their supply ships. His fleet froze, calculating odds, debating the best countermeasure. In that moment, leaped into action. He boarded a small fighter and darted into the chaos, weaving through fire and debris with a precision that seemed impossible. Shots that would have killed anyone else barely touched him. He intercepted the enemy, turning what seemed like a certain loss into a stunning victory. His chest tightened. She had always believed in planning, in preparation, in calculation, but acted on instinct, and his instincts were flawless. Her fleet moved with renewed energy, inspired by his courage and decisiveness. She realized for the first time that leadership was not just about strategy. It was about heart, and his heart burned brighter than any star in the galaxy. When the battle ended, walked among the surviving ships, surveying the damage. Her mind replayed every move had made, the split-second decisions, the daring maneuvers, the bravery that refused to bend even when odds were hopeless. She had faced powerful enemies before, but never someone whose mere presence could change the tide of battle so completely. That night, alone in her quarters, could not stop thinking about him. She had always prided herself on her skill, her intelligence, her ability to face danger without fear. But standing next to, she had felt something new, vulnerability. Not physical vulnerability, but the awareness that everything she had believed about strength might be incomplete. Humans, this one human, was something else entirely. She remembered the stories from her childhood, the legends of humans who armies, survived impossible odds and inspired hope where there was none. Had smiled at them back then, dismissing them as myths. Now she understood. Legends were not made from exaggeration. They were born from real acts of courage, from people who chose to face fear head-on, and from warriors who could turn hopeless moments into triumph. Stood by the viewport, staring at the stars. She felt fear, yes, but also admiration, respect, and an unspoken challenge. She realized that she had found more than a warrior. She had found a force of nature, a living example of everything her people had once only whispered about in awe. And she knew, deep in her heart, that the coming battles would test her in ways she had never imagined. For the first time in her life, doubted her own limits, and that doubt was both frightening and exhilarating. Humans were no longer stories, they were real. And one of them had just shown her what courage truly meant. The battle was over, but the echoes lingered. Smoke rose from the wreckage, alarms still flickered in the distance, and the survivors moved cautiously among the debris. Walked through the aftermath, her mind replaying every moment of the fight. She had led countless victories in her life, but she had never witnessed anything like. He had faced danger not with hesitation, not with calculation, but with instinct, courage, and an unshakable will. She found him at the edge of the colony, standing silently, watching the horizon. The debris of the battle scattered around him made him look almost untouchable, like a figure out of the ancient tales she had once thought were only stories. His calm presence, his quiet strength, made her feel small in a way she had never known. Approached, her usual confidence softened by awe. She began, her voice low, hesitant. "I need to say something." He turned to her, expression unreadable but patient. You were incredible," she said, struggling to find the right words. "I've read about humans, about their courage, their strength, their way of facing impossible odds. I never believed it. I thought humans were just legends, stories for children, myths meant to inspire." Listened silently, his gaze steady, giving her the space to speak. "But now I see," she continued, voice trembling slightly, "I see that the stories were true. You are real. Every word, every tale, they are not exaggeration. You are a force unlike anything I have ever encountered. I underestimated humans my entire life. I underestimated you." His eyes softened, and for the first time he smiled, not proudly, not arrogantly, but gently, as if understanding the weight of her admission. "Legends," he said, "they start somewhere. Maybe now it's your turn to believe." Felt a warmth she could not explain. It was not pride, not fear, not victory, it was respect. Deep, profound respect for a being who had risked everything to save others, who had faced impossible odds with nothing but courage and instinct. She realized that humans were not just warriors. They were symbols of hope, perseverance, and the kind of bravery that inspired others to rise beyond fear. She remembered every moment of the battle, stepping into danger without hesitation, guiding her fleet with uncanny precision, saving lives that would have been lost. Each act of courage had carried a lesson she hadn't expected to learn. That strength was not only in weapons, numbers, or strategy, but in heart, spirit, and the refusal to give in to fear. Felt a strange mixture of humility and gratitude. She had always believed she understood power, leadership, and courage, but had shown her that true power was more than tactics. It was the ability to inspire, protect, and act with unwavering conviction. She felt that same spark of awe she had experienced as a child reading the old legends, but now it was alive, tangible, and real. As the sun rose over the colony, casting golden light across the scars of battle, knew something profound had changed within her. Humans were no longer stories. They were real, living proof that courage and determination could defy the impossible. And one of them had just shown her what it truly meant to be legendary. For the first time, allowed herself to hope, not just for victory in future battles, but for the possibility of learning, growing, and facing the universe alongside a being who had forever changed her understanding of strength. Days turned into weeks, and the intensity of battle gradually shifted into the rhythm of preparation and training. Found herself spending more time alongside, observing him, learning from him, and quietly beginning to trust him in ways she had never trusted anyone before. At first, it was tactical, watching how he assessed situations, how he inspired soldiers without shouting, how he moved with purpose and confidence. But slowly it became personal. They trained together on the simulator decks, running through hypothetical combat scenarios. Was precise, careful, and methodical, following every strategy she had mastered in her years of command. However, moved differently. He was fluid, intuitive, unpredictable, and yet terrifyingly effective. Sometimes he would make a move she hadn't anticipated, and yet it always worked. He would catch her off guard, then offer a small smile, as if encouraging her to expand beyond the limits she had set for herself. "You think too much sometimes," he said one evening as they reviewed a maneuver. "Trust your instincts. You already know more than you realize." Blinked at him, realizing the truth in his words. She had always relied on logic, strategy, and calculation, but there was something to be learned from instinct, from courage, from the quiet bravery that guided him. She began to see that strength was not just measured in victories or numbers. It was measured in how one faced uncertainty, how one chose to act when the odds seemed impossible. Outside of training, they shared quiet moments, told her stories of distant worlds he had visited, battles he had fought, and people he had saved. Listened, enraptured, imagining the countless lives touched by his courage. She shared her own experiences too, her people, her culture, her dreams and fears. For the first time, she felt completely seen, not as a commander, not as a leader, but as someone who could be understood. One evening, under the twin moons, and sat on the observation deck, watching the stars shimmer against the dark sky. "I never imagined meeting a human would feel like this," admitted softly, her voice almost lost in the hum of the ship. Turned to her, expression gentle. "And I never imagined I'd meet someone willing to learn as much as you do," he replied. It was more than friendship, yet not yet something words could define. There was trust, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding between them. Felt inspired by his presence, not just by his skill in battle, but by his heart, his courage, and the way he treated every living being with care, even in chaos. The bond they were forming was subtle but powerful. She noticed the way soldiers around him, following him without hesitation, driven not by fear, but by admiration and loyalty. And she understood why. Humans, in particular, carried a strength that could inspire even the most cautious hearts to fight, to hope, and to act bravely. Realized she had changed. She no longer saw humans as distant legends. She saw them as living proof of courage, resilience, and determination. And she saw not just as a warrior, but as a teacher, a guide, and a companion who had opened her eyes to something she had never fully understood. That true strength was not just physical, but emotional, moral, and unwavering. As the night deepened, and the stars stretched endlessly before them, felt a quiet warmth in her chest. For the first time, she understood what it meant to trust someone completely, to be inspired by another being's courage, and to recognize that some bonds could change the course of one's life entirely. And with by her side, she knew that whatever challenges awaited them in the vast galaxy, she would face them not just with skill and strategy, but with heart, courage, and a bond that no enemy could break. The galaxy was quiet that morning, but knew it would not last. Reports of enemy movements had already reached the fleet. This was no small skirmish. It was a test of everything she had learned, of every lesson had taught her, and of the courage that now burned deep inside her. She stood on the bridge, looking at the stars stretching endlessly beyond the viewport. For the first time, she felt anticipation, not fear, but a mixture of awe and readiness she had never known. Beside her moved calmly, surveying the fleet with the same quiet assurance he had shown from the moment they met. His heart swelled with respect. He had become more than a companion in battle. He had become a symbol of hope, courage, and determination, a living reminder that legends were not just stories. They were real, breathing, and capable of inspiring greatness in anyone willing to follow them. The enemy appeared suddenly, dark shapes emerging from the void, weapons blazing. His fleet reacted instinctively, but hesitation crept into some ships. Then she saw move, not shouting orders, not panicking, just acting. He guided the fleet, made split-second decisions, and faced the enemy directly when one ship broke formation. His courage was contagious. Her soldiers followed him without question, moving with precision and determination that surprised even herself. In the chaos, realized something profound. Humans did not just fight, they inspired. Every action took, every risk he embraced made others braver. Soldiers who had been ready to retreat now charged forward. Ships that had been faltering now moved with confidence. And she, too, felt her own courage rise, not from strategy or numbers, but from witnessing his fearlessness and unwavering heart. The battle raged for hours, and yet somehow they prevailed. Enemy ships fled, morale shattered by the unexpected resilience and coordination of his fleet. When the final shot was fired and the silence returned, stood on the bridge, breathing heavily, her heart racing not from fear but from awe. She turned to, expecting pride, perhaps even arrogance. But he stood quietly, as always, calm and steady, his presence alone enough to make her believe that anything was possible. "You were incredible," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I never imagined a single being could change so much. I never imagined humans were real." Looked at her, his expression gentle, almost smiling. "Legends are always real somewhere," he said. "They just need to be recognized." Felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of respect, gratitude, and admiration that words could not fully capture. She had faced countless battles, led armies, and made impossible decisions, yet nothing had taught her more than this. Courage, heart, and determination could surpass anything else in the universe. Had shown her that. Humans were more than warriors, they were legends in flesh and blood. As the fleet regrouped, looked out at the stars again, she felt hope not just for the battles ahead, but for the future of her people, inspired by this one extraordinary human. She realized that strength was not only in skill or technology, but in the heart of those willing to face the impossible, to protect others, and to act with courage even when defeat seemed certain. For the first time, understood that the legends she had grown up hearing were not myths. They were truths waiting to be seen. And now, having stood beside one, having learned from him, and having felt the power of his presence, she knew that her understanding of bravery, hope, and heroism would never be the same. Humans were real, humans were incredible, and some legends, she realized, were only beginning. Turned back to, feeling a sense of unshakable trust and awe. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy sent next. And this time, she knew they would not only survive, they would inspire a story that would be told for generations.